Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I'll be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. Let's welcome my guest today, Dominique Turnbull. Hi, Dominique. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So, as I start off the podcast, I ask everyone to introduce themselves, to please include when you left the Don, where you went to high school, then college, then post-college, and what you're currently doing right now.
So I left on Estridge 2011, and I went to Atlantic Community High School in Delray. I graduated from there in 2015, and then I went to FSU, Florida State University, and I graduated in 2018. And then after that, I did my master's at UCL, University College London. I started in 2019 fall, and it was a 2-year program. So I finished in 2021.
Nice. What did you wind up studying for your master's program?
I did my master's in city planning.
Nice. And as we discussed earlier, you're now?
Yes, so I now work as a city planner or a planning officer for London Borough, Lewisham.
And for 13-year-old Dominique who's listening to this, could you go into a little bit more in depth of what that actually is and what you do?
Yeah, so city planning in general is just sort of shaping the built environment. So like buildings, roads, parks, anything around you. It sort of needs, approval, or it needs a plan and how it's designed, and, how taller buildings, how shorter buildings, what are they designed for? Is it residential? Is it commercial? Things like that. But currently I work for the city or borough of Lewisham. So they basically get applications in for any potential plans that an architect wants to build or a property developer wants to build. And I basically review a plan and say, yes, no, or change it this way, and we'll approve it.
Wow. It just brought this to my mind. Have you ever seen the show Parks and Recreation?
Yes.
This is like Leslie Knope's fantasy.
It's definitely, yes, in the field of Leslie Knope, for sure.
That's so awesome. Well, first off, thank you so much for coming on and telling my students about your life and your experiences, because I think it makes a huge difference when someone hears the story of a former them. Like, they don't understand what it's like to be Dominique at 26. They only understand what it's like to be Dominique at 13. So this gives them the opportunity to hopefully figure it out. And like you said earlier, here it gives them an insight into a career that you yourself were like, I had no idea what this is when I was 13 years old.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to do that, because I think a lot of times we didn't know a lot of the careers that were available when I was 13.
Right. And here you are in London. You're not in America doing this. You're in a foreign country doing this. And that's what's even more incredible. And I'm just over the moon that here I am. For those of you listening, I'm actually in Colorado on my summer vacation recording this, and Dominique is in London, and technology is an amazing thing. I am just blown away. So again, thank you so much for coming on. And I love to ask this opening question of, how did Dominique get inspired for learning? What was it that got her to go, hey, I like this?
So I think you had mentioned, or I've kind of listened to some of your podcasts, and a lot of your students had talked about, their parents, pushing them into the library and things like that. So I actually, from an early age, my parents are, they're engineers, so they're very into education. And they used to bring me to library, I want to say maybe once or twice a week, every week for at least the first 15 years of my life.
Nice. So, wow, go mom and dad.
That's awesome. And I was an only child, so
oh boy,
they basically it was me and them, and my mom would read, Harry Potter with me. She read Aragon with me, and we would, sit and discuss what do we like, what do we dislike. We would go get books together, and my parents were just very into, I guess, making it more fun. I think my dad
hands-on
and very hands-on. Yeah, I remember. In elementary school, I don't know if they still do this thing, but they had the Mad Minute, and they'd have a paper with a bunch of multiplication questions. And you have to do it in a minute.
Hmm.
And my dad, he's very competitive, but he would take that paper and he would copy it, like, and white out the answers I've done. And like on the weekends, me and him would race, like who's gonna finish it faster.
Oh, how funny. Well, that's awesome. You had somebody challenging you at a very young age intellectually, but made it fun. That's what I try
Yeah.
to tell people. You have to make it fun. If your studying is wrong, like at the beginning of every year now, I make the kids take a learning styles test because most kids don't know how to study and
Mm.
they're not studying correct for their learning style. And I tell them, look, reality is I didn't learn what kind of learner I was until I was learning how to teach learners. I know that's a lot of learning, but I didn't learn until graduate school. And all of a sudden, I'm studying less and I'm getting better grades and I'm not working as hard and I'm doing better. I'm like, why didn't somebody show this to me a long time ago? So
Yeah.
that's awesome that you were challenged and he did it in such a way where it was more like a competition and you enjoyed it, not so much that it was like, okay, you have to do this. Okay, you have to do that. So
Yeah.
being the child of, well, you yourself, you said you weren't born in the United States. Where are you from? Why don't you tell everybody?
Yeah. So I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. So
Nice. I
Jamaican.
love Jamaica. It's what a wonderful place to vacation. I've never lived there, but I've vacationed. It's so beautiful. So this is a common theme throughout the immigrant child that the parents come, they want their children to be educated. Her parents are obviously educated if they're engineers. Where's the education? The library. And that's the common theme. And I'm so glad, honestly, that it's come up so much to show people that this is where your success began because your parents were so insightful to go, my daughter needs education. Where is the free education? The library. Let's
Yeah.
let's
I mean, it's
let
a great resource, like the free library, and I think everyone should take advantage of it. I mean,
uh,
it
I
was so
agree.
much in my life that, like, actually, my first job in high school was at the library.
No way.
So
Oh my God, the library is like full circle in your life. That's
yeah,
tremendous. Wow. So, yeah, and I love to hear that it's a common theme, but it's interesting how it's the immigrant theme, not necessarily the, fourth, fifth, sixth American person. It's the immigrant that the parents realize, well, maybe we didn't have this education in our country, but we have it in our new country, and we need to take advantage of it to fill our child up with as much information, education as we can. And that has become a part of your life, which is tremendous. So, along with the learning theme, was there a specific teacher that after the library made the light bulb turn on where you made that connection to like, wow, maybe it's a subject, maybe it was just a teacher?
yeah. So I think maybe throughout, you know, my learning experience, there's been teachers that have been just, I don't know if it's nice or maybe they recognize you as an individual, or maybe they talk to you less as a child. But I always remember those teachers making learning like a lot more fun. I think in Don Estridge, like Miss Adamo, Miss Newman, I remember Mr. Sorgan. I remember you as well, Mr. Proper. And, you guys kind of made it, much more of a conversation about what we were learning, and much more, I guess, hands-on maybe.
Yeah,
But
because
it
they're
was less
trying.
of a lecture.
Yes, they're trying to do it more as an interaction and less as a lecture telling a story. It's just kind of funny. On a side note, the only person left on that group that still teaches at Don Estridge is me, which is kind of funny. Um,
Oh,
so, but
oh
yeah,
no.
I think that's what makes a good teacher is someone who tells. Well, at least I say a history teacher because I don't know how to teach anything else, and sometimes I debate whether or not I know how to teach history. But somebody who is a good storyteller is what brings you in. There's a teacher, and I can't remember his name. He teaches across the street at Lynn University. He's on Sunday news programs a lot for his expertise in history, and he tells some of the greatest stories. And I'm a history teacher, and I've done this for a quarter of a century, and I'm still in awe when I listen to this guy. Well, he has a PhD in U.S. history, and he's interesting. You find those people in life. It's just like friends. You're friends with somebody because they're interesting. Normally, they have some kind of commonality with you. You both like to read, or you both like sports, or I mean, we do have friends, but it's rare when they have absolutely nothing in common with us. But most of the time, it's because of the commonality. But I love the way this guy tells a story. And he always has really cool things to say about Ben Franklin and just all history things. And I agree with you. Even as an adult, listening to a teacher, you want someone who can tell a story. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I think it's just really important that you can sort of be interested and relate to them, and they relate to you, and just understand being a student.
And being the intelligent young woman you are, you actually answered my next question, which was what was made that connection about the aha moment. And you said it. It's their teaching style, perhaps their personality, the way that they deliver the material. And I really like that one point you said about how you felt like you weren't treated as a child. Could you elaborate on that a little more? I really like that. That's a new one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may be a commonality with a lot of the teachers I liked, which, when you get down to it, like at first I'm thinking, oh, they cursed at me, but that wasn't really the reason that I liked them. It was that,
Right.
You felt that you were on some sort of level, the same level, and you were talking to someone that was listening to you, and you were listening to what they were saying, and you weren't necessarily filtering yourself. So I think like Miss Adama was great at that. I remember really loving dissecting, which is so strange because I'm
Right. You think
old
it's
now,
science, not English.
yeah, exactly. So I think it was just really important to me to feel like I could actually speak to the teacher.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you bringing that up because I don't think that's come up before. I like that idea. And I try to do that as well. But the problem is, though, as we've discussed, that 13, 14-year-old mindset, they have a hard time discerning the difference between, is this person my teacher? Does this person want to be friends with me? Like, what's really going on? Like you said, that maturity level isn't quite there. So it's a fine line that you're skating on to make sure that you don't go too far, because you don't want to just be cursing to curse, and you don't want
Yeah.
to alienate some people, because not everybody does, as you heard earlier, and all the kids know I have a really bad potty mouth. But when I'm in front of children, it turns off for some reason. I don't understand why. In front of adults, no, but children. And I think I look at it as, if I don't, then they know that they shouldn't. And I don't want to be that do as I say, not as I do person, because there's always those kids who are like, well, if Mr. Proper cursed in the class, why can't I do it? And then I did it and I got in trouble. Like, why is that? I just don't want to be that person. That's my
Right.
reasoning for not doing it. But to make a point, I can understand.
No,
So
yeah, I don't think it was necessarily that they were actually cursing. I think,
no,
yeah.
they were just cursing, not at you personally, like, gosh darn it, Dominique, what are you doing? Exactly. No, it was just throwing the curse out there. And a lot of times teachers do it just to see who's actually paying attention, and they throw out that curse, and all of a sudden now everyone's like, whoa, wait, what did they just say? Now I'm
Yeah.
listening. Now I'm getting there. That's interesting. So you have accomplished a lot and you have done a lot. What would you say was your most challenging educational experience, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so it's actually maybe more like further on than when I was in your class. But I think one of my most challenging experiences was I guess the backstory to it is, so I went to IB in Atlantic High School. So I was just very, very prepared to go to FSU. Like I had a lot of credits, a lot of classes were done for me. I mean, I think I could have graduated in 2 years, and
Wow.
I didn't really I wasn't emotionally ready for that either. So I think my sophomore year, I had to take a graduate class, a graduate student
Wow.
class, and
As a sophomore? Oh my God.
as a sophomore. I mean, that's pretty much how far in
Wow.
advance I was,
Yeah.
and
Hold on. For those that don't understand, graduate school is after 4 years of college. So normally, sophomores, second year college students, are not taking graduate school classes.
Yeah. So, and I think at that point, it was like freshman, sophomore year, and I was cruising through these classes. Like, I wasn't necessarily putting in the hard work, I would say, to get the best grade or to do best in school. So when I came to this graduate class, I was like, oh, it will be fine. Like, I'll just do how I usually do. I will learn here and I won't have to put in as much extra work. And that was not the case. Graduate classes, they tend to have like, I think 2 grades for the whole class.
Right.
Or 1
Exactly.
test.
They have like a midterm and a final, and that's
exactly. So you bomb that, you bomb the class.
Thank you for saying this, because I have tried to explain this to the children all the time. I'm like, as you go up in education, the tests, the grades are less and less, and you make one mistake and it's ruined. I mean, don't get me wrong. You also have to maintain a B average in graduate school, or else you can't be in graduate school, no pun intended. And people don't understand that because, again, you're in middle school. What are you thinking about graduate school? You don't even barely know what college is. And you're like, what, graduate school? So I want to backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
Did you take a lot of AP classes at the IB? Now we're just using acronyms for everything. So International Baccalaureate and Advanced Placement. So did you take a lot of AP classes in the IB program?
I definitely did. I don't think I could number it, but the first 2 years you're not taking IB yet, because it's actually more junior, senior time. But I was taking APs freshman and sophomore year of high school, and I was taking IBs and APs junior and senior.
Wow.
So yeah, and I think it started. There were AP classes in Don Estridge, no?
No, only now we have the Cambridge program, which is pre-AP. The only thing I think we had was like, we did have high school credit classes. I don't know if they were necessarily AP. I don't think so, because you didn't have to take the test at the end. There was just a high school credit, so you earned credits in order for you to be able to have an easier time in high school, kind of like what you did in college.
Yeah. I know. I think I did a high school credit class is what I'm remembering. But yeah, I was taking quite early on, so it did help out for FSU for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Because like you said, here you are as a sophomore, you're automatically taking graduate level classes. So let's revisit that. So you're taking this class, and
yes.
was it the work? Was it the teacher? Was it the expectations? Because here you are, a sophomore, you're 19, 20 years old?
Yep. Yeah. 19, 20. So I think it wasn't necessarily a subject, but I don't think the teacher, as graduate students go, they don't exactly sit there and say, oh, my undergrad, I want you to know that this is how the class goes. You kind of have to actually pay attention to the syllabus and what's being said and things like that. So they're definitely taking less care of you, and you have to take more responsibility. So I think it was a GIS class. So it was like a geography,
informational systems. I know what that is.
Yeah. So I did my undergrad in geography. So
okay, yeah, that helps with the career move that you did.
Yeah,
sure.
yes. So yeah, I think it was huge. Like it was kind of a learning curve for me, and it was very new. There wasn't tests regularly happening. It wasn't an update on how are you doing. It was 2 grades, and I think the first one came, and I did not do well, and I was like, oh no.
Well, but again, here we are, that I didn't start going to graduate school until I was 23 years old. So I had more years. I finished college. You're in college. So you're trying to kind of play catch up, because in essence, weren't you then probably one of the youngest kids in the class who hadn't completed college? You're kind of like on the fly. What do they say? It's kind of like building the plane as you're flying.
Yes, that was definitely me.
Okay, well, I appreciate your honesty and you saying that, but it's amazing to know that here you are at this young age and you were able to accomplish all these things. And again, this is not an uncommon theme for that either. Sarah Bailey did the same thing. And she was able to get her master's in the 4 years versus the 2 years. And it's the same thing. You put your nose to the grind, do the work. It's all about time. We only have so much time. And if you can advance your education in high school because these things are offered to you and you were willing to do the work, you're going to be so much ahead of everyone else, so much more advanced than everyone else, because you did what you needed to in high school, and then it kind of made it somewhat easier until this very difficult graduate class in college. But you were preparing yourself, and that in itself is amazing because you put yourself out there and you were willing to try to do it. So now that you've described to us this ridiculous college schedule that you took, and I am sticking with ridiculous because your average student does not do this. How did you unwind? Like, how did you find time, and what did Dominique do that made it so much like, okay, I can do this?
Yeah, so I'm quite maybe more like a grandma, I like little crafts and things. Like I do crocheting and I like to read. So I think you have to find things that are just a way for your mind to actually turn off. I love doing puzzles. That's something I do a lot, actually.
Like puzzles, like Sudoku puzzles, or puzzles like pieces puzzles?
like pieces puzzle, like a thousand
Oh,
piece and up. Like I
nice.
just find that that's a nice way for my brain to not be, what do I have to do thinking about that? I'm just thinking, what piece can I find to match? And, I think there are different ways you can find to turn off. But for me, reading, crocheting, puzzles, yeah, even going out with friends helps. But, sometimes you want time by yourself. So,
It's funny you bring up the puzzle because I have a new colleague, next door neighbor. I don't know if you remember, Miss Kuiper was next to me for like 15 or 17 years, and she moved to sixth grade. And I got a new colleague, Mr. Chisholm. And just this year, at the end of the year, he did that very thing. And I didn't think kids would be interested in it. And I peeked my head in his room one day, and every single kid was up at the puzzle. No, this piece goes there. And blah. I was like, oh my God, like I couldn't believe how it's so funny sometimes how antiquated technology is, or games or what have you, actually still have a presence if you do it, but you have to present it to them because most people don't. I mean, you did, but it was funny you said that because I remember walking in the room and I'm like standing there going, what are they doing? And I look and I'm like, what, they're a puzzle? And Mr. Chisholm was like, yeah, they love it. I don't understand why. I just brought it in one day, slapped it down there, and in a whole day, all 5 periods, put the puzzle together. I was like, that's incredible. And that, I guess, again, finding something that you wouldn't think for the kids like yourself. Imagine if a teacher in middle school did that and threw out a puzzle. You would have been like, and that's why I think I want to go out and do that. I want to go out and buy a cool puzzle and put it out there and see if the kids are interested. I mean, maybe it was just his set of kids, who knows? But it shows that it's there and people enjoy it. So that's cool. Yeah. You have to have downtime. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're, whatever job or whatever age. Even in middle school, you have to find time for yourself to decompress, to have that me time, to be able to say, this is what I like to do. And yeah, I mean, the things that you like to do, those are things you can do for the rest of your life. There's some things people do that at some point, like if you're doing athletics, you just get to the point where you just can't be that competitive anymore. But I'm sure there's competitive crocheting somewhere, but
I'll have to find
you'll
it.
have to find it. And I'm sure in London there must be some cool stuff. I mean, even to this day, my mother's a huge puzzler, and whenever we find something cool like an art piece, a Degas, a Monet that's been turned into a puzzle or whatnot, she loves that stuff. So that's something that'll live with you forever.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are the ones that have sort of carried on. I mean, in middle school, I think I was doing a lot of sports as well. I was swimming and playing tennis. So I think, just, yeah, I think methods of just not thinking about, what is bothering you or what's on your mind just to turn off is just great.
And I think in modern day society, that sentence you said is becoming more and more challenging and difficult because people do not want to, well, young people do not want to put down their cell phones. Like, I just went on a walk before we started our pod, and I was with my wife and my dog, and I didn't have my phone with me because I didn't need it. What do I need it for? I'm in the mountains of Colorado. I'm just walking around on high elevation and enjoying the smells and the views, and it's a beautiful day. But so many people are just so attached to that infernal device that they can't let it go and put it down to do a puzzle or put it down to crochet or read a book or what have you. And, I'm not saying that you can't read on your phone, but I think there's something. I'm not a huge reader myself. I really wish I could be. Too many concussions and ADHD, not a good mix for wanting to learn how to read. But I mean, I know how to read. Excuse me, not wanting to read. I obviously know how to read. Hilarious. So it's just finding whatever that is. Like I don't know. I wouldn't say like I'm not a guitar virtuoso, but I've been playing for a very long time, and it gives me enjoyment, and I like it. And that, like you said, I put down everything else. I don't have my phone in front of me unless I need the chords for whatever song I'm trying to play. But it's that detachment, and I think we need to all have an antiquated, I guess is the best way to say it, an antiquated hobby or skill that has nothing to do with the phone, and you just put it down for a little while to disconnect and recharge with just the way old timey things used to be. Like when I was 13 years old and we didn't have cell phones and computers, and we had to go outside and play and make up our own games and do things. Oh, wow. That's so cool. So was there something about Don Estridge as a school that you learned after you left? Like, was there something you were like, wow, I learned that at the Don and that's really helpful?
Um, Maybe not something specific. I mean, I think you'd mentioned earlier that there was a lot of kids from all over, I think, the district, and I think that was very cool, just to meet people outside of your area. But I think also Donna Stewart prepared me quite well for high school. I mean, I hope it's the same.
Oh,
But
yes.
when I went to high school, there were people who just did not have the same level of experience I did, and it honestly it almost started to gear me into that mindset of I wanted to be a planner, because your environment affects you so much. Because I went to that school, therefore I was a little bit of a step ahead of some people, and therefore had different opportunities, which I just thought was horrible. I think we should all have
The
the
same.
same opportunities, and we've all been to eighth grade. We should have learned
The same stuff.
same stuff and
But
had the
there's a difference
same.
between going to Don Estridge and going to Carver or going
Yeah,
to
there is.
Omni. And there is, unfortunately, it just is that way, and
Mhm.
I'm the same way. I tend to forget that. Like we were talking about earlier when I said I had met a teacher here and she was like, her mouth was on the ground when I was telling her about all the success stories and I was going to interview you today. And she was like, that's so amazing. You still have these connections with these kids and now they're adults and they want to talk and tell you their story. And not, I, it's kind of like, I guess, you being a city planner. You got this job through hard work, but maybe in your mind you're thinking, oh, anyone could get this job, and everyone else is like, no, the reason you got this job is because of all the hard work you did. And I think we all see it that way. We all look at it, well, if it happened to me, it probably happens to everybody else, and that's not really the case. It's like why some people remember, as we spoke about earlier, certain teachers with personalities and certain teachers that don't have personalities. And you're like, oh, this is the worst 55 minutes of my life. And I swear the clock went backwards. So it is interesting. Was there something that high school showed you that the Don maybe didn't? Is there something that when you got to high school, you went, oh, wow.
um I don't know. I think sometimes middle school, like, they're saying you're going to go to high school and, they're not going to put up with this, or they're not going to let things go. And I feel like Atlantic, or the more you go up in schools, the less that they actually dictate what you do. And the more you have to put in your own work. So I think um, the strictness does go, but you actually need to sit there and study and do your work, or you're not going to pass. So
So
I think that was different for high school.
So the step up is really what you're saying. Whereas middle school, it's a lot more hand holding. And in high school, it's a lot more, Dominique, if you want to do it, you got to do it. The teacher's
Yeah.
not going to be like, you didn't turn it in. Like
Yeah.
we didn't, when you were there, we didn't really have a late policy. It was more up to each individualized teacher. Is that correct? Do you remember that?
I don't really remember, to be
Okay, because
honest.
now we have a late policy. So it's like
Okay.
if it's 1 day late, it's a 75. It's a 2 days late, it's a 60. And if it's 3 days late, it's a 0.
Right.
So for me, I was always raised and my education was like, look, it's due, turn it in. Like that's it. And if you didn't turn it in, you got a 0 because you didn't turn it in.
Yeah.
So does that change in high school? Do you remember? Did that change? Were they more strict on deadlines or were they still somewhat lenient because they just wanted the kids to do the work?
I think they definitely were less lenient than middle school, but I think it depended on the teacher. I think some teachers are more understanding, and then some teachers were just, you didn't turn it in, then you've had plenty of time to tell me that you couldn't turn it in, or tell me that you're having issues and you haven't turned it in, therefore you get a 0. So I think it depends on the teacher, because even when you're talking about, I just thought of a teacher in my high school who used to actually lock the door when the time came for
Right.
being in class. So like if you didn't make it on time, you actually just couldn't even go to the class.
As a lot of the APs like to say, when the bell rings, the door swings. And if you're on the other side of the door, you're off to detention. Yes, exactly.
Yes, yes. So
And
I
we don't
think,
have that in middle school. Middle school is like, come on, get in the room. I'm just marking tardy. Okay, let's
yeah,
go. High school is like,
I,
too bad. The learning's
yeah,
going on without you.
for sure. And I think you just need to be aware of, what teachers do you have, and I think a lot of teachers are understanding if you do have something going on in your personal life, or something that happened where you cannot turn in this paper on time. But if you just flat out don't show up, don't turn it in, then yeah, you might have some issues.
I could imagine. I was going to say something which was kind of ironic. I'm like, well, it's the game of life. And then all of a sudden I realized there is actually a game called life. And it's knowing the rules. It's knowing, like you said, which teacher will curse in front of the students and not mind, and who won't, and who's going to allow you to be like a minute late to class, and who's not going to mind. Or as I like to do with some of the more how shall we say, verbose children who like to talk as much as Mr. Proper, sometimes I give them their 5 minutes and I'm like, okay, here's your 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to talk about whatever it is you want without offending anyone. And when I tell you it's done, you're done. And many of the kids over the years are like, I really appreciated the fact that you did that. And I'm like, well, I look at it this way. If I give you your 5 minutes in the beginning of the class, you're going to shut up for the other 50 minutes. If I don't, you're going to talk for 50 minutes. So here I'm giving you your time, use it wisely, and now I need to do this. And so many of them are like, I just needed that time to, I don't know, complain about my science test or talk about sports or whatever. And, you never know, like Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So sometimes you get something and I'm like, I've even had some kids who go, yeah, Mr. Barber, I know you're really into sports and you're really into hockey, so I would like study up on hockey in first and second period. So when I got to your class in fourth period, I could be like, hey, how about that Devil game last night? Blah, blah, blah. And, now all of a sudden I want to talk about it because hockey is my favorite sport and you're talking about my favorite team. You also have to know, I guess, how to butter up the teacher to get them a little bit off topic and off task. But what irritates the kids is was that police or was that ambulance? I don't know the sounds.
That might be ambulance.
Okay.
I am. My flat is on the busy road. So.
Oh, okay. No, but it's just a different sound than what it is in America. You guys have different police sounds and ambulance sounds. I just think it's cool. It's just, we all have our way of connecting with people. But what the children get upset with me is they don't seem to fathom that I've been doing this long enough. You're not going to get me off task the whole period. And I can wind in and wind back any conversation back into whatever we're talking about. It could be the War of 1812. It could be the Revolutionary War. It could be the Civil War. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be able to bring it back. I've done it long enough because they think, oh, I could just get Mr. Proper off task like Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. And I'm like, yeah, for about 10 minutes you can, and then we're coming back. But yeah, that's incredible. So since you are in a foreign country, and I know I didn't ask this question to you earlier, how would you compare? How is it different being an American living in London and now this is your life? Like, how much did your life change, or maybe it didn't change at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely changed. Maybe me as a person didn't change, but
no.
I think London is very unique in that there's people from everywhere. So you sort of meet all these different people that sort of change how you maybe think of the world. And then there's also physical things that change. Like I'm thinking today's a hot day. There's no AC in most of Europe. So
nope, not here in Colorado either. We're semi-subterranean, so we get free air conditioning, but everybody else is complaining on the hot days, just like they are in London.
Yeah, it's been an adjustment as a Floridian. I have to have fans and the windows and
I'm sure a whole new wardrobe. You needed to buy clothes that you've probably never even owned before.
Yes, the first coat I bought, when I got there, like people were laughing because they said this is a fall coat, and I had bought that for my winter.
Oh, so you had no clue what you were doing.
I had no idea. I went to FSU. I had only lived in Florida.
Right, and what's the coldest it got at Florida State in Tallahassee? 40?
I mean, maybe
30?
40, maybe, yeah. 40.
Yeah, because it snows in London, for those of you that don't know that. Like, they get cold. It gets cold.
So, yeah, it's just regularly cold. So.
Right. You're basically on the same line as like New York. So think about New York weather is basically what they get. But, they're more of an island than New York. Manhattan's an island, but not all of New York State. So that's really interesting. So a whole new set of wardrobe. Oh, what I know they speak English there, but how did you feel about like the language barrier when they were using euphemisms or sayings that you're like, I don't know what that is?
Yeah, there was tons of new things to learn and things that I've incorporated. One that I'm trying to say that I still haven't said is cheers as thank you. Like I've always just thought cheers, is cheersing the the glasses, you know,
Clinking
and
the glasses, right?
clinking the glasses. And no, you need to say cheers as thank you. And people will say cheers to me, and I'll be like cheers back, and I'm like, oh no, I'm supposed to say you're welcome.
Exactly. And you're like, oh man, I'm trying to fit in here.
Yeah.
Because again, these are things that people don't take into account because you live there. You're not just there for school. You're not just there for a vacation. This is where you live. This is your life. So you're every day. And it's funny you say that because I remember one time we were on the Mr. Bender trip and we were on the tube, the underground, and the American kids didn't really seem to understand that it was kind of like rush hour and that they needed to get out of the way. And when Londoners are late, they're going to let you know, and they're going to give you a couple of choice words, and usually of the curse word kind. And they were like, I don't understand. Why are they screaming at me? And I'm like, because you're in the way. You're on vacation. They're late to work. You need to move and be more mindful. But I also think a lot of it has to do with, I grew up 10 minutes from New York City. So I'm used to really good public transportation. Coming from South Florida, not so much. So if they have never actually traveled on mass travel, they don't know what to do or what the appropriate is to do, much less in a foreign country where they have different manners, different rules, different ways of doing things. So that too must have been like, learning a whole new train system because we don't have that really in South Florida. I mean, the Bright Line has finally taken off since you've left, but we don't have like a subway system or a tube system, as you guys call it. We don't have the underground, So was that a challenge, or were you familiar with that from maybe going to other states that have a better transportation system?
So I definitely was aware, like I'd been to New York, I'd been to Paris and things. I had visited places where they had a system, but I think living here is quite different. And as someone who's from Florida who had not dealt with public transport, it really changes your whole mindset. Even I had thought to myself the other day, so I've lived here almost 4 years now. And when, I first arrived, like, people talking loudly, people walking slowly, people getting on the wrong side of the escalator, I would chuckle like, oh, there's a tourist, like, oh, this. And now I'm like, if I miss this tube, I'm going to be late for work. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Now you've become everyone else because you live there. And it went from, I feel like a tourist to I actually feel like I live here. And you understand, right, if I miss this train, I'm going to be late to work and my boss is going to be very angry with me. And it's not like I should know better. And that's it. You have to learn all these new things. I'm just lucky. I'm married to Magellan. My wife can figure out any tube system in any country. I mean, we've been on it in London. We've been on in Paris. We've been on it in Italy. Plus, I've driven in many of these countries as well. And you just have to learn these things. But for me, I'm just like transportation. Just tell me what I have to do and I'll do it. But she's the one on the back end who really enjoys doing all these things. I mean, the last time we went to London, I finally found out that there's actually an app now for the tube, and you can find wherever it is you need to go on an app. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. Because if you're an out-of-towner, I grew up using the New York City subway system, and that pales in comparison to London.
Yeah, I mean, technology is great now. I mean, there's apps that will tell you literally which train car has the least amount of people, so you should line up to that one.
Oh my God, that's incredible. I didn't know that. That's incredible. Thank you for that knowledge. Oh my God, that is incredible.
Shout out.
Without a doubt. And that's the thing, like, when I drove in London and Scotland, that's the problem. You kind of have your American driving on your mind, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I'm on the wrong side of the road. Like, what am I doing? And, like you said, everybody's like, oh, out of towner, they know that you're not from there. American, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. And these are just things that we have to learn. But this is what makes us, just more interesting as people, because we know it and we can discuss it. And like-minded people understand it because they've tried it, they've done it. And in your case, it's your everyday. Wow, that's just so incredible. And 4 years. So, okay, then, since it's been 4 years, what is a noticeable difference, if you can say a few or one, a noticeable difference about being now living in London versus, say, living back in the United States? What is something that maybe Londoners do slightly different than maybe your average, Floridian or somebody from the United States?
Well, it's
I know
different,
I put you on the
because
spot.
there are different ways you can think about it. Like, well, English, the English culture is a bit more passive than the American culture.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think,
They're not arguing. No.
no, I think something I've learned, like, to work with, and even in school, is like kind of reading between the lines of what's being said. Because I think in America, I kind of cherish it when I come home. I'm like, the abruptness, the directness, this is what you're telling me. I love that. Whereas, in England, I feel like I kind of have to read, you might be saying you like this, but you don't like this. So I need to
Yes.
change it.
Right.
So I
They're
think that
very,
was,
very passively nice people. And you can't
yes.
tell. It's hard to tell when an English person is really mad, because in America, they blow up. They'll yell and scream at you. They'll curse at you. And
Yeah.
in England, no pun intended, but a proper person is going to tell you in a way that is nice. And like you said, you have to kind of sift through it and go, oh, wait, I think they're angry at me.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So I think that was something I definitely had to get used to. Londoners in general, I think, or maybe this is more of a city thing, but they're sort of more private. You don't, somebody's walking by, you're not necessarily like, hi, hi, which I think in Florida, you maybe do a little bit more than in a big city.
That's a really
Um,
good that's a really good thing. Then I want to dive into that a little bit more. So now you obviously had schooling, so you met people, but was it harder then for you to meet people because you were quote unquote a foreigner from America? Or on the other hand, because I know for myself, when I've always been in the foreigner or the new guy situation, it actually worked to my benefit. So did you feel that it was beneficial or detrimental, or some of each?
I think it was definitely beneficial. I think London's quite, a hodgepodge of people. So that's kind of cool, where you meet people from like everywhere. So everyone is quite eager. Well, when you actually get to a setting where you're sitting down and talking to someone, you're eager to say, where are you from? Or what experiences have you lived through? The other day I met someone from Bhutan, and I had never in my
Wow,
life met someone from Bhutan. I was
that's
like,
amazing.
amazing. Like, how did you end up here?
Right. How did you get from there to here? Whoa.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And I think people want to know, especially from Florida, we have quite a worldwide reputation. So they want to know, how was it growing up there? And,
Right. Right.
was
Oh,
alligator
and then you
real
can tell them
fun?
that you're Jamaican descent, so that's
Yeah,
another level. Yeah.
another level of, oh, where,
Interest.
interesting interests and points. So that's quite good. Um, I think, just in terms of London. But yeah, I think to the original point, like, of walking around, I think, there's a level of privacy which you don't really have as much in Florida, even though you're seeing it's because everyone's living their life around you in such close proximity, that you kind of have to give someone that level of, okay, you do you while you're on this tube. Maybe you're having a rough day,
Right.
like somebody's crying on the tube. I'm not going to ask them
Are you
what
okay?
happened.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because people aren't as, it's not just not the same. They're very into themselves. They're very introspective. What's the word I'm looking for? They're very introverted. They're
Mhm.
just they're not as free going. And yeah, it is interesting, because I know, as I said to you, I have some friends that live there, and it's just interesting when I talk to the dad, who's a friend of mine. He's American, so he still has a lot of his American ways, even though they've lived in London now for like 25 years. But his daughters are exactly what you're saying. To get them to open up and talk, I had to get to know them years and years and years. And then finally in London, once we went to the British Museum and we were looking at something, and all of a sudden they just opened up, and they felt like, okay, we know you well enough that we can let you into our lives. Where in America, people are just like, oh, I just met you, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So that's got to be an interesting way, because it's definitely the word I was looking for was reserve. That's it. They're more of a reserve kind of people, that
Yeah.
they'll talk to you. It's we have places like that. Like, I felt kind of like that a little bit in California, where people were like, at least they'd say hello, but you could never really get to know, or they weren't as like, let's open up and talk as much as, like you said, Florida. East Coast is definitely different from West Coast, and then now you're in a
Mhm.
different country. But that's
Mhm.
interesting. These are things that people don't know because, like we said before, you're on a vacation for, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. You're not getting this full immersion that you are for 4 years. So you're definitely a wealth of information to know. And I'm sure people are so happy to hear that here's this girl who started off in Jamaica and then she moved to South Florida and then was able to move all the way to London. And now she's living there and trying to you want to eventually become a citizen?
Possibly. I'm trying to live here as long as I'm happy.
Okay. No pressure. No pressure.
No, I mean, I think it's
America and
5
Great Britain
years.
aren't listening, so it's not like you're forced into, oh, you said you want to.
Yeah, I think it's like a 5 years outside of school, and then you get a citizenship. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think if I'm happy and been here 5 years, then maybe I'll apply.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time and telling us about your life experiences, which are amazing, by the way. I am so impressed with the woman you have become and this job that you have gotten and your college experience, your high school experience. I mean, you worked really, really hard and it's paid off in numerous ways. It's unbelievable. So as I end this podcast every time, I ask basically the same question because I want to know if people remember. Do you remember who Don Estridge was?
Yes, I remember that he was a computer engineer, I think.
Correct. Ding, ding.
Yes,
Hold on. Finally remembered and got to use it. It's the claps. Awesome. Well, your parents would be quite perturbed if their daughter couldn't remember who's the reason why they actually have a job.
Yes, for sure. Yes, and I always remember that because we used a lot of technology in Don Estridge. So I
Now,
remember that was.
are you still part of the group that had to take a technology class that taught about that? Do you remember that in 6th grade?
I don't remember having to take one that taught about that, but I remember having to take a technology class.
Okay.
Like we had to learn all the softwares, and I remember that very specifically.
Okay. Yeah, because we used to, in the very beginning, we had a class and they would talk about Don Estridge and the history of the school and how it was originally an IBM secret facility in Boca Raton that most people, even if they lived there, didn't even know existed. And they're like, when did they build that school? I'm like, I don't know, 30 years ago. They're like, I've lived in Boca for 50 years. How is that possible? And I go, because it was hidden and you didn't know it was there. That's why it's a secret. So we still have Don Estridge's personal computer. It's in a beautiful glass case. His surviving family, because I don't know if you know, him and his wife passed away in a plane crash. They were going to a conference. I think it was like 1984, 85. And when we eventually announced that we were going to name the school after him, because that's where he supposedly invented the personal computer for IBM. And they decided, well, as a thank you, they donated his computer. So that sits in the front office, which is kind of a cool thing to have. But yeah, that's why we're named Don Estridge, because it was originally an IBM facility and they invented all kinds of technology. And once the building became obsolete, they I can't remember if they sold it to Palm Beach County at a really good price or donated it to Palm Beach County. And then they repurposed it into a school. And we're, if you can believe this, steadily approaching our 20th anniversary because we started in 04, 05. So in next year is the 23, 24 year, we will be in existence for 20 years. That's just incredible how time marches on. Well, yeah. Dominique, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, which is unbelievably interesting. And I know that there's a little Dominique out there who's going to go, I never thought of that. Thank you for telling me that. Because as you said to me earlier, you didn't, and somehow you found out about it. And now this is where you are. So you're able to spread your message of this is a possibility for anyone to do. So thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.